Welcome. Thank you for joining the U.S. Data Management Project Management Practice Best Series Practice webinar. I'm Becky Melody, your hostess for today's session. Gary Meek, USDM's Project Management Practice Lead, will be presenting. The discussion today will cover introductions, webinar logistics, direction for post-webinar collaboration, and our discussion topic, project planning in the life sciences, more than tasks in a project plan. We're proud to have Gary Meek presenting today. He's the Global Practice Lead for USDM's Project Management team, and he has 25 years in program management and project management experience with more than 10 years in the life science domain. Gary has presented on project and change management to multiple forums and is a recognized leader in his field. He's a subject matter expert in program and project leadership, organizational change, strategic planning, and building teamwork. He's worked with small, medium, and large life science firms worldwide and recently led a cross-functional global project team, including major organizational transformations and integrations. USDM is focused exclusively on the life science domain. We're the market leader in providing IT, quality and regulatory, IT compliance professional service solutions. USDM's other practices areas include quality and auditing, nutraceuticals, enterprise content management, enterprise resource planning, product life cycle management, manufacturing automation and equipment, clinical and drug safety, business intelligence, laboratory systems and equipment, GRC, and of course, our project management practice. We're headquartered in Ventura, California, and we've delivered more than 1,000 successful projects with over 150 life science clients. We offer hands-on experience assisting clients under regulatory distress, and we're the market leader for validation accelerator packs. The content will be covered in approximately 30 minutes, and then we'll invite you to post questions for our team via the iLink message board on the lower left of your screen. Or you can join the discussion on LinkedIn and post questions there. Or if your question is of a confidential nature, we're happy to address it offline. We do appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and now I'll turn the presentation over to Gary.
Thanks, Becky. This is Gary Meek. I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar and pass along my thanks for taking the 30 minutes or an hour out of your day to join us. Today we're going to talk about a slightly different way to do project planning as opposed to the more traditional, the project manager is given a scope, they go away, they create an MS project or some kind of project schedule that includes the tasks and works with people to get estimates. This is taking a slightly different approach, doing more of a facilitated, more of a workshop type approach to planning. If you've attended any of the webinars that I've done in the past, you know that I'm a big proponent in building relationships through project management, providing effective communication through project management, and really taking a more personal, people-oriented approach to managing projects. So that's a bit of an overview. We'll also talk about why we should change the way we do planning, provide you a little bit of statistical information on planning as seen by some of the studies. We'll talk about the benefits of a new approach to planning, and then we'll go into the facilitated session, what would be the components, how you would go about this, and then obviously at the end we'll answer any questions that may come up. So first off, I just kind of want to give you a little bit of philosophical information so you may understand where I'm coming from. So from a planning perspective, one of the things that that we know is when we create a plan, it's not going to be cast in stone. We're going to do everything we can to stick to it, but we have to create the plan. We have to plan for adversity. So build in the things that we know of, identify the risks, but we have to be prepared to adjust. So one of the things, again, as we're going through this, you'll see building this team, building this sense of ownership by everyone else can really help us as we forward to those adjustments. So moving forward, why do we want to change the way that that we do planning? So many of the surveys that come out that list the reasons for project failure, typically lack of proper planning is number 2 on that list. Number 1 on that list is lack of effective communication. And so in changing the way we plan, it lays the foundation for both. It improves the planning, it improves the plan, but it also helps us lay the groundwork for improving the communication as we go forward. It really starts to build a team, really starts to build consensus and a sense of ownership across the entire team as opposed to just the project manager. So some of the side effects when we don't do this are some of the other areas that we see for failure: unclear scope, bad estimates, and difficult stakeholder management. So those are other areas that we see as failure points for projects that this type of an approach can really start to help us cover. A quote down at the bottom from Winston Churchill: "He who fails to plan plans to fail." That's kind of how it goes. We don't, a lot of times in projects, at least the projects that I've seen that have significant issues, there's no real concrete plan on how to get from point A to point B. So this approach will help us address that. So some of the benefits of taking this approach to the upfront planning process, we would build better collaboration between the business and the technical teams. So this facilitated session would include not just the technical folks, but would also include the business and some of the key stakeholders. It provides us with a better estimates in the overall plan because everyone is participating. We can do both best case, worst case, best guess planning as we go forward. And then this also helps us to instill a sense of ownership in the entire team. What I've seen in many projects is, the project plan is not just managed by the project manager, but basically owns it. People tend to point to the project manager as someone who owns the project, someone who owns the plan, and consequently is responsible for it. And we need one key responsible individual. We need one key responsible person to be accountable. But we also improve our chances of succeeding when everyone's bought into the plan and everyone owns the plan, and we build a team that can successfully take this forward and, again, get us from point A to point B. So building this team is really the pathway to success. I've done this approach many times. In previous projects, I've also done the approach where someone hands me a contract or a project charter or some early on document with a scope statement in it and says, I need a plan by the end of this week, or I need a plan 2 days from now. And that approach sometimes works, but it is very random and it's very hit and miss. When I've done the facilitated sessions, the success rate goes up just because everyone understands what we're doing, everyone understands the reason that we're doing this, and everyone really takes this sense of ownership and this sense of pride in how we can move this project forward. So let's talk about the facilitated planning approach. So one of the things that we've done very effectively is to build the rapport, build the communication in a global setting by pulling the team together and doing a face-to-face first planning session, kickoff session, whatever we want to call it. But it's really about developing the roadmap or the plan going forward of how we're going to get there, understanding everything that is required in a project. So understanding what the scope is. And we're all sitting in a room and we're talking about it and we're going through it and we're all agreeing that that's what the scope is. Understanding what are the key deliverables. Everything that's associated with the project, and we're building consensus and we're building that team to understand everything basically the same way. So we get face-to-face. The global projects, I'll be honest, it's very tough sometimes. It's very tough when you try to do these types of things over the phone or over a conference call. Getting the group together face-to-face is the best way to build those relationships and really move that forward. So when we're doing this facilitated planning, we always have, or typically companies have a predefined methodology or a predefined approach that we will go through. So as we're building kind of the high-level tasks or the high-level activities or the high-level deliverables, we can pre-build as much of that as possible to shorten the amount of time required for the facilitated session in the workshop. And then some session rules, and this is really really important. So we have to be open and respect others' opinions. We want to make sure that people feel like they have a place to talk, feel like they have a place to give their opinion, and they're not jumped on because of that opinion. We also have to make sure that people are thinking outside the box. We're trying to come up with the best approach for how to get this project completed, and it sometimes will require some outside-of-the-box thinking because we have very tight deadlines. Sometimes it's an end of the year. Sometimes it's some other business driver that requires us to make a given timeline. And so sometimes it requires some outside-of-the-box thinking. One of the rules, failure to disagree is agreement. So if you don't voice your opinion, if you don't participate in the discussions and it's not noted before we leave the session, then at the end of the session, that is what we're going forward to build. Too many times people don't voice their opinion in the sessions. They leave the session and then they start sending out the various emails disagreeing with what the consensus of the team was. So we want to make sure that people understand that during this session you can disagree all you want to. Once the session is done, then we have our agreement, we have our marching orders, and we move forward. The other part of this is anything that we don't talk about in the session, any deliverables that we don't come up with as part of the session will be considered out of scope. And as the project manager, that's very clearly defines what's in scope and what's out of scope and what we're expected to deliver by the end of the session. And so again, having key stakeholders in the meeting, having those critical technical folks in the meeting is vital to successfully coming up with that plan and being able to keep this concept of if it wasn't in the meeting, it was out of scope. And then just a blurb at the bottom, better planning results in better plan. So now we start to talk about what are the components of this facilitated planning session. And again, a lot of this can be pre-built so that you're not starting with a blank piece of paper. You're starting with your methodology or your framework that you have in your organization. So what we're starting with is we're starting with the project overview. And so the purpose of the project overview is to make sure that everyone understands this project from the business perspective. So why are we doing this project? What's the business driver for doing this project? What's the business driver for the timeline for doing this project? So that, again, that common understanding of the why is critical to being able to move this forward. So we start with kind of a profile of the project, what we know about it, what's a high-level description of this project. And then we would roll into the business driver, the business problem that we're trying to solve. And then we would roll into the solution benefits and the key elements. So when we finish this, what is the business going to get out of this? We understand the business problem now, and now what are they going to get out of this when we complete this project? And then the last part of this overview is the definition of done. And I see this overlooked time and time and time again, and it becomes a problem. So when do we know when we're complete? What are the key characteristics of this being complete? So things like software delivered to the production environment, business SOPs completed, validation testing, and validation summary report complete. So it's really, what does it mean to be done? So we all know when we get that activity completed that we're done. A lot of times these things linger and the fuzzy line gets drawn between what completes the project and what begins support. And so if we define all of this up front, then it makes it much clearer for the project team to understand, okay, we're done, we've transitioned this to support, and now the project folks move on to their next project. So the benefit of this is it helps us all understand that we're working towards the same goal and what those goals are. So the next components of the facilitated session are what I call the enhanced WBS, the work breakdown structure. And so this would start with the very high level activities, and this would come from your methodology or your framework or PMI or whatever approach you use to project management and laying out your WBS. That would start there, and this is something that can be pre-built. So whether you're using slides, and I typically do this with a PowerPoint presentation. And if you're interested, I'd be happy to share that with you at any point in time. So you would start with the high-level activities, and we're going to lay those out. This is kind of the high level, and then we start driving down from there in typical kind of WBS fashion. So from there, for each of those phases, we're going to have the key deliverables for that phase. We're going to identify those deliverables. We're going to talk about each deliverable across the team, and we're going to have an agreement that, yes, indeed, that is a deliverable that we're going to produce for this project based on the risk. So I know in a lot of organizations, their framework allows you some flexibility in what deliverables you would bring in and what deliverables would be out based on the risk to the project and the risk to the organization. And so we're going to get an agreement on all of that. And so at the end of that, then we know, what are we delivering for this project? What are all of the deliverables for this project? And from there, again, kind of in WBS fashion, we're going to break down what are all the activities to produce this deliverable. And again, if you can picture the setting, we're all in a room together going through all of the key deliverables and all of the activities, and we're all going around the room. So now we're building that consensus. We know what the steps are. We know what the deliverables are. The team then can go into things like what are the resource requirements for each deliverable. And again, it doesn't have to be in the most granular level that the DBA needs to spend 3 hours, but it's really who are the key resources. So again, the business team and the technical team all comes to the same agreement, all understands it together, and all understands what exactly are the key resources that we need, both from a business and a technical perspective. We all know that typically in an IT-related project, the business resources are typically the challenge because they have a full-time job plus this project. And so this lays out, again, very early on in the project, what are the activities that we're expecting the business to deliver? What are the key resources that we need from the business to be able to deliver those tasks? And then we get the agreement from the business that, yeah, that looks like something that we'll be able to do. So again, at the end of the session, we're all on the same page. We've all seen everything. We've all agreed to it, and we move forward. So then taking those activities, we would then start to come up with estimates. And again, the team is coming up with the estimate together. It's not the project manager coming up with the estimate and then having to drive it, and no one's had input, and you get that whole, it's not my plan, it's your plan. I didn't say it was going to take 3 weeks. You said it was going to take 3 weeks. And so this way everyone's in the room together. We get a best case is how I typically try to drive these sessions. We do a best case, we do a worst case, and then we do what we expect. So that gives us kind of a range so that we start to, as we produce this report back out, everyone understands kind of that it's not a 3-day activity. Maybe it's a best case, it's a 2-day activity. Worst case, it's a 7-day activity, and we think it's going to take about 3 or 4 days. Because again, at this stage of the project, you cannot lay out exactly how long each activity is going to take. And so then from there, after we've got those estimates, then we start to look at ways that we can improve on those estimates. So what kinds of things can we do to be able to get to the best case? So maybe it's things like pre-order the infrastructure or the hardware. Maybe it's get a more of a senior level subject matter expert from the business that can help understand the requirements. There's many things that might be done, but again, this is kind of that brainstorming, that outside of the box thinking that we can do as part of this facilitated session to be able to get the team thinking kind of along the same lines. And then obviously we're going to also take a look at the risks. So what are the risks? And, you know, more detailed and more granular than the standard risks of, you know, there's a risk associated with not having the correct number of resources, or resources might be working on other projects or might not be available. You know, the standard risks that we see in every project. This gets down to more of a task level to say, what is this specific risk associated with this project, with this task? Things like, you know, as we get into talking about risks, you know, maybe it's things like constraints in the infrastructure, performance related to the new application, you know, whatever the case may be, but it's more detailed and it's more granular. So again, as we're producing out an executive summary from this facilitated session, we'll be able to identify those things and put them in the summary for the executives to make sure that they understand. So it's important then at this point that we're clearly defining at a pretty detailed level the activities necessary to deliver this project. We then summarize it, we produce it back out, and it's there for review for the senior managers. So a couple of thoughts for the road. As you can see, I'm a big fan of the quotes and the motivational type things. So planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now. So we're thinking about what's going to happen. We're doing it outside of maybe one person doing it or two people doing it. It's really the entire team talking about what we're trying to do in the future. And then the last one, it pays to plan ahead. It wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. And that's been said many, many times, and I could never find out who actually said it. So that's all I have for the session. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Gary. Really appreciate you sharing the solid information around project management. We'll open the floor to questions now, and while you're typing in those questions, I will remind you that the webinar has been recorded and will be available on our website, which is, of course, usdatamanagement.com. And opening again the LinkedIn channels for further discussion and posts there following the session. Please join us there if you can. Looks like we have some questions coming in. Thank you for those of you typing in compliments. We appreciate that. First question is from John, and he is asking, how do you handle this in a global company with people spread out all over the world?
So this is a tough one. This is where the project manager really needs to put on their sales hat, if you will, and really work with the senior leaders to sell the concept, I guess, to work with the senior leaders to get the budget necessary to do this. Maybe you can't fly everyone in. Maybe everyone can't be in the same location. I've done this via video conference. It doesn't work quite as well, but it works better than just phone. At least you can see, one of the things that as a project manager and then, kind of working on the interpersonal and the relationship type skills, one of the things that's important in a session is to be able to see the group that you're talking to, see the group that you're leading, and be able to read body language, see the participation. So it's important that you get face-to-face if at all possible. If not, I would do video conference. Phones don't work just because people tend to be typing emails while they're talking on the phone or listening on the phone, and you really don't know whether they're actively participating or not. So put your sales hat on and sell the concept.
Well said. All right, our next question is from Brenda. Most of the tasks in a project are technical. Why not just have a technical meeting to identify tasks and estimates?
Yeah, so again, it's really about making sure that everyone is on the same page. And while in a typical IT project, 80% of the projects are technical tasks, the 20% are the tasks that typically end up biting it. Because again, the business typically doesn't have the resources available, so it's very important early on to let them know exactly what the requirements are, what the level of effort will be, and then also get their buy-in and their commitment that they'll have the resources available to help us drive this project.
Thank you, Gary. All right, looks like that's it for the questions coming in. I do see a few. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's one from Greg just in. Let's see. This is Greg asking, what software tool do you use when capturing the group's sessions?
I usually use PowerPoint to produce the session, to do the facilitation, and I try to capture everything in the slides where possible. And again, I'd be happy to send you out a sample of the slides that I've used in the past to be able to record this information. But that's usually how I do it, and then I tend to put a 1 or 2 slide after the session. I'll put a 1 or 2 slide summaries, kind of an executive summary of the sessions, and make that kind of the report out. So the entire session would be documented in this PowerPoint slides, and then the summary would be added, and then I would send that out to all of the people who attended the session, but also all of the senior executives that have a piece of ownership in the project.
Very good. And here's part 2 question from Greg. When you're running the Facilitate Planning Components Enhanced WBS phase, do you do this at the same facilitated planning session, or is this a separate meeting, or do you just run this on your own?
So this is all one session. Everything is at one session. What I try to do as much as I can is pre-build the phases and the deliverables based on the methodology of the company that I'm working with. I hope that answered the question.
Very good. If not, just let us know, Greg. We'll get additional. Oh, he says yes. Thank you. And here's another question from Ali. Is RACI important for each deliverable and each task?
So it's good to do that if you have the time and you want to go to that level of detail in the session. That's a great thing to do and a great idea. Typically, these sessions on a standard project, just in the stuff that we talked about today, will be somewhere between a day and 2 days. And at least my experience has always been that we don't tend to be able to get people for longer than that. And so what I would typically do is I would take these sessions and then I would start to build out the RACI after that and send that out for review and approval.
Very good. Thank you, Gary. All right, looks like that's it for our Q&A session. Again, we do appreciate y'all taking the time to join us, and we invite you to join the discussion forum on LinkedIn. We welcome your insight, your feedback, and we'd like some suggestions for future topics. If there's something that you need a little direction with, or you need an answer to a specific pain point, let us know, and we'll see if we can't work that through. And odds are other folks would like the answers as well. If you would, if you appreciated our presentation, do let us know by clicking the like button on the USDM LinkedIn group page, or even better, put a comment out there. It should take just a moment, and it would mean a lot to us. In 2012, this is going to be an important indicator that our management team is looking at and using as a basis to continue to fund the complimentary webinar series. I'm sure that you're aware of the different practices as project managers. You touch everything from IT to lab to manufacturing, et cetera. So if we could offer direction or support across those practices, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Gary, thank you again for presenting today. We appreciate you taking the time, and thank all of you there in the audience for taking the time to join us. On behalf of the U.S. Data Management team, we appreciate the opportunity to team with you towards excellence in compliance. Have a wonderful day.